Hello, Michael Temperato, and welcome to Restitutio. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, great to be here, Sean. Thank you.
I thought just to start things off, you could tell us a little bit about your background, your spiritual journey, how you became a Christian.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian family. My dad was a pastor of a church here in New York for over 10 years. Him and my mother were actually missionaries in Africa for 10 years. They did a bunch of evangelical work. My dad comes from a Pentecostal charismatic background. You can actually look up the world's largest drum set. He set the Guinness World Record, and he would take this kid around and basically preach and play in different places. So I grew up in a pretty interesting non-denominational Christian family.
And where
It,
in Africa was he?
so I know it was somewhere near Cape Town. My older brother and sister were born there. I actually was born in Texas when they moved back to the States.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, and it's sort of hard to say this, but it is the truth that my dad's church was a great church. My dad genuinely loved people, still does. And, the people there have so many great memories of all of them. But I do think that they had a very surface level understanding of scripture. And I feel sort of failed by the modern church system because as I got older, I was just thoroughly unprepared to handle both big questions about God, about Bible, how do we know it's true, to also just, doubts and not being able to handle temptation and the lusts of this world, the lust of my flesh. I really just felt sort of bankrupt. And so what ended up happening is I made some really dumb decisions. I went to jail for a bit, and it was in that time that God used it to really cultivate a genuine desire to know Him. And I made a pretty clear and conscious decision to seek Him. And that's really where my life began to change. I was around 18, 19 years old, and I ended up joining a church. I served there for many years. I was the worship leader. I ended up leaving that church and continuing to search. And that's where I got introduced to all the things that people hear me talking about lately now. And so that's like the summary of my
Yeah,
journey. And now I feel far more prepared. Feel like I'm you have the knowledge to do life right and just more than a surface level.
yeah. I wonder if you could share a little bit about the doubts that you had that drove you. I have three teenagers currently, and it's a really challenging time as you are pressured by your friends, by society, and even more so today by social media in much stronger ways than probably back when you were a teenager or when I was. So yeah, what were the doubts that really kind of drove your curiosity and your where you went next?
So I should probably start actually with what I was positive of, and that's was that in some way, shape, or form, I thought the Bible was true. I did even at that point prior to making dumb decisions. I did that study, but usually it was just in regards to creation. Like I believed God existed. Certainly, those I didn't have doubts on those. Right, I was sure about that. But I'd say where the doubt did come in is more just in regards to Christianity, my version of Christianity. I think many churches exist in what I would call like a microcosm, where these non-denominational churches all sort of have their own creeds and statements of faith, and obviously they're just borrowing from the reformers who borrowed from the Orthodox and the Catholics who've been doing that really forever. So I doubted things like that. How do I know that my version of Christianity is true? Why don't I even know about other versions? How come I know nothing about the Catholics, the Orthodox? How come I don't know how the Bible came to be put together? Right? Councils and creeds, right? Like the church fathers, who are they? Right? I didn't even know about any of that. And so the more I began to study it, the more I just began to question. So it was really things like that, like my place in Christianity. as well as just doubting what fruit it would have in my life. At that time I was drinking, partying, using hard drugs, just very standard poor decisions. And I'm a Christian, but yet I'm struggling, right? Why? Does God really care about me? Does he really work in my heart? Uh, why do I feel this way? Why do I struggle with these things? Those were the types of doubts that I had that God would begin to work through, as well as repair a lot of the damage done to my heart and mind through drug addiction, through pornography, through just broken relationships, never healing, not forgiving. God would work all that out and still is, uh, at post that time that I'm talking about.
So the first collection of doubts that you had sounds to me like really helpful. To ask the question, what is my form of Christianity? What is my subset? And then what are the other options out there? I think that's a really positive thing to ask. I wish more people would ask that question. I'm like you. I wanted to know what all the denominations were about. I wanted to know why there are differences. What's the story there? I wanted to learn about the founders of all the different groups. I wanted to learn about Muhammad and Islam and the difference between traditional Islam and Nation of Islam, especially in this country. And I wanted to know about the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Confucius. Like I wanted to know because I basically had the mindset that it's extremely unlikely that I'm born into the correct faith, the correct understanding of God. And, considering that like 90+% chance that I'm not born into the right one, I should, I should see what other options there are. And, I believe what I believe currently because partially, at least because I've been through that journey. And I think you probably do too. So I don't think that's necessarily negative, but it seems like in your mind, in your experience, it was pretty negative. So help me understand, like what was bad about it? Was it just that like church people were saying to you, sit down and shut up, don't ask questions, or what? What was your experience there?
That's a great question. So I'd say there's really two spheres I could answer this in. The first is going to be where it started. Um, so the Apostle Paul talks about the war against the spirit and the flesh, right? We are not just a body, right? But like I believe humans also possess a spirit. So the reason why it was maybe not so beneficial, at least at the time, is because the flesh was pulling me. The world is pulling you constantly. And you even mentioned social media now, right? It's far worse than when even I graduated, high school in 2012. Uh, that war, not being prepared for that, is what sets you up to be led astray by your own doubts, because that's the incentive underlying all of them. Like behind the doubts really is a desire for sin in our hearts. I believe that that is true. Paul talks about, I want to say, what's it, Romans chapter 1, that the things of God are clearly seen from the creation of the world, right? Even his eternal power, right? So that people are without excuse. But also people are, talk about what's it, Second Peter 3, people are willingly ignorant, right? Who knowingly leave God and hold and worship the creature, the creator, right? So
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying there? That that was where I think I would be led astray by my own
Mhm.
doubts, and because the world was pulling me and I wasn't ready to face it.
Let me ask the question another way because I'm really interested in the answer. As I mentioned, I live with people that are in this situation right now. Um, if you, knowing what you know now, could advise yourself back then, what would you say to yourself, or what would you have your parents do differently that would be helpful? Or do you think it's just like inevitable, the track you went down, and that's just the only version of Michael Temperato there is.
Well, I could be wrong because all I know is what I experienced, but I think it would have been great to have been taught all those things growing up, to have a better understanding about them, as well as to have been introduced to spiritual things by my parents, by the church, not through the world. I never should have learned about what sex is through the world, right? I never should have learned about drug use in addiction, right? About the war of your flesh. Like none of that was really taught, and yet I was filled with a bunch of different scriptures. That's why it's the understanding. How would you teach the understanding to me? It's hard. I can say I would have liked to known all of it, but maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. Sometimes people do have to make their own mistakes. It takes a type of humility that maybe is foreign to teenagers of just not knowing what you don't know.
Yeah, I think I've my story is similar to yours. There are some differences too, but maybe it's just growing. Did you grow up in New York, or you moved here later? You don't really sound Texas to me.
Yeah, yeah. So I moved here when I was 7, so
Okay,
I've been here
yeah,
most of my life.
yeah. I moved here when I was 4, so yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think for me, it was like I wanted to, and I think this is standard for teenagers. You want to find out where the boundaries are. You want to find out which ones are fake, which ones are real, and eventually, if nothing else stops you first, you hit the police. And I ran into the police a few times myself, and by God's grace, I didn't end up doing any time. But like there were definitely, I've been charged with crimes before, misdemeanors and felonies, but you know, eh, got out of it, for whatever reason, and but for the grace of God, go I. I could have ended up for 3 years, in jail. That could have easily been me. Um, and I'm curious about how you would say these things have affected you now in your 30s, married with kids. Like, would you say that these experiences that you've had make you more compassionate towards people, or that they give you more patience with like people that don't have it all together, or how would you say it affects you
I
today?
mean, looking at it now, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, but in the moment I wouldn't say it necessarily felt that way. Uh, something that I'm working on just in my own heart and love for other people is not being quick to condemn others, and because to do so would just be to condemn myself, say a few years ago, right? Looking back at those times in my life. Um, something else that sort of is coming to my mind here now too, Sean, is that I,
yeah,
I think that when I was younger, I could have handled more. I bet you kids can handle more of the real hard topics earlier. I think that's probably another mistake here. That it, like they'll have to be exposed at some point or another. The question is, are they prepared? I'd rather be prepared early, and I think it's just the lack of that and combining it all together that
yeah,
made that. So it doesn't necessarily answer. It just made me think of that. But
yeah. That's
yeah,
fine. Do you want to add anything to that, or we good?
well, I would just say yes. That would probably is the short answer.
Okay,
It
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
does help looking back.
Uh, when I see somebody that's like, take like cursing for example, like people that are dropping f bombs every other word, right? Like, I don't think to myself, this person is a terrible sinner who is beyond the pale of Christianity. I think to myself, this is just like a normal guy, like I was, and hasn't hasn't met God, or hasn't come to believe or take their discipleship journey seriously yet. And I don't know, it just kind of like helps me to have some compassion on people, so, or maybe just empathy. And part of that maybe just our glorious empire state of New York, and just like the culture that's up here, very secular, very, I don't know about in your area of Rochester, but over here in Albany, in the Albany area, it's very post-Catholic. And so you have a lot of people that like that's the church that their parents don't go to, uh,
Hmm.
but they were born into or whatever. So yeah, I mean it's a very how do I say, like, hostile to Christian area to live in. And some years ago, I don't know if you came across this, but I saw the Barna report, the survey people, Barna group, and they came out with a report on like 50 US cities and rated them based on how Christian they are or how Bible friendly they are or whatever. And it listed my area last in the whole United States, like 50 out of 50. Albany, Schenectady, Detroit. Those are our three major cities. They treated it as one in the survey because they're all kind of small. And they're like, yeah, like people in this area don't believe in God very much. They don't read the Bible. They don't know what's in it. And when I saw that, and this was maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I saw that and I thought to myself, this is why we need to be here. You know what I mean? Like I have no interest in living in the Bible Belt at this time in my life because those people already have like all this access, all this knowledge of the Bible, and they're great people, and I've spent plenty of time with them. But I think this is where God wants me and my family. But the downside of that is dealing with your kids, and as your kids get older, Mike, you gotta figure out what you're gonna do. And you want them to have these experiences, these questions, and being available to them. That's something that I think we need to take seriously. So yeah, I appreciate that nugget.
Yeah, it's man, I can only imagine. I know one day I will be there with teenagers. Yeah, for now, I've just focused on improving our systems. Systems of how we teach them the narrative. What is life about? What does it mean? A lot of these things are perspective. I also, so that I consider myself a Torah observant Christian. I could definitely talk more about that. That played a huge role
Well,
in.
let's go back to the moment where you like really took your faith seriously, where you would say you converted or you were born again or whatever terminology you want to use.
Okay.
What was that moment like for you? Was it just like were you in a meeting? Were you by yourself? Was it defined moment or was it something gradual? Like what was that like for you?
So it it was both a moment and gradual. So how does that make sense? Well, in one sense, obviously you're in jail. Okay, you're realizing the consequences of your decisions. What's that quote that sometimes the enemy will want people comfortable so that they don't ever wake up to their need for God, right? So I hit like a rock bottom. I know many people don't get there, and some that doesn't even help them. But I thank God He used that for me. And so, yeah, that's a real moment where again you have to make a clear, conscious decision that listen, right now is not going to be the rest of my life, and I knew that was found in God, in spirituality, or something like that. But it was also gradual in that all the different behaviors, the way that I was living, I still have to work through that. I formed a lot of negative thought patterns, a lot of behavioral patterns. Certainly, God, by His amazing power, I think can supernaturally remove some of those things. But I also think He leaves some of them in because it's actually that process of working through them that refines you. So in that sense, it was gradual, right? I knew I had to start making those changes. And yeah, God used that time as well as after that. I mean, I came out, I joined a church, and that church was peddling a lot of false narratives that I ended up just challenging. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up having to leave later. But and even now, I'm still growing, right? So it's a moment, but it was gradual.
All right, so let's talk about your journey. Uh, well, there's kind of two aspects I'm curious about, like your journey to observing Torah, but then also your journey to coming to believe that the Father of Jesus is the only true God. Like, is that the same thing, or are those two separate paths that you took?
Yeah.
And okay, which was first?
Torah observance.
All right, so let's talk about that. How did that come onto your radar?
Well, we were in a Bible study looking at Acts, what's it, chapter 10, and Peter has this vision where God lowers a tarp to him with all different types of animals on it and tells Peter to rise, slay, and eat. And Peter's like, I've not eaten anything common or unclean, right? Uh, then that happens 3 times. God gives him this vision repeatedly. We were in the study going through this passage, and the pastor stops right after that vision and says, so, what God is teaching us here, revealing through Peter, is that, those Jews had to follow the law and they had to, watch what they eat. But now, after Christ, we can eat anything. And Peter didn't know that. And that's what God wanted to show him. And then basically, he tried to close the book. All right, we're out of here. And I was like, whoa, 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 wait a second. Actually, the next verse says that not even Peter knew what it meant. But then 3 Gentile men showed up at his door. And it actually gives the interpretation in verses 26 to 28. He says, Peter goes, God has shown me not to call any man common or unclean. So Peter had the vision and he gave the interpretation. All right. And that was that God was teaching him that Gentiles can be saved. Salvation is for the Gentiles. That's what Peter didn't understand. And God was using unclean foods to teach him that. Hey, Gentiles are not like unclean foods. So I wasn't Torah observant. I wasn't anything. I was just still just learning about hermeneutics and exegesis. And I was like, hey, that's not true. And that ended up being a big controversy
Oh,
to bring
really?
that up. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I was young and more fiery than I am now, and I wasn't good at picking battles. And I think I handled it extremely unwise.
Yeah.
But yeah, the long story short is that they said, listen, we don't agree with that here. And so, you'll have to leave. And I didn't even agree with that then. I mean, this is literally one Bible study. That's what was told to me at the end of it by the pastor there, and that didn't sit well at all. Eventually, I ended up turning in my ordination. I was ordained as an evangelist by the church, and then I started asking those questions, and that's where I discovered that, yeah, I think many of these laws are still beneficial to our lives.
Cool. So you have been living that way for a while now. Is it like 10 years, or do you know how long you've been
It's been like a
kosher?
solid
And
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Keep the Sabbath, that sort of thing. Um, what about the journey to biblical Unitarianism? It seems like kind of a natural outgrowth of a curiosity about the Torah, because like Deuteronomy. But what was your journey there?
Yeah, that is correct. It started with just realizing I was very wrong on something, right? That I thought I just listen, it's my position that things like Sunday observance come from the Catholic Church. Okay, and Protestants inherited that from the Catholics. The Protestants questioned a lot of things. Martin Luther, 95 Thesis, I've read it. Okay, he questioned a lot of valid things, but they also took a bunch of baggage with them. And realizing I was wrong on that, I started to question everything. I was like, what else have I not realized? I completely didn't understand Paul. No idea what he was saying. And it's because I was just stripped from the historical context in which these things were said. But, anyways, that's what allowed me to widen my net a bit and say, okay, I'm going to start firing at some things. I'm going to question some things. And I found out that I didn't even fully understand the nature of God either. It was at that time I actually started to take some classes online. Seminary, I had taken different placement exams. I was considering to go to college for all sorts of stuff, and I realized that I actually wasn't even a Trinitarian. I had like always thought that way, but my understanding was heretical. That blew my mind, and as I began to question that, the response you get from Trinitarian people who are just sold, who are caught in the matrix of God's nature, was terrible. The way people treat you, the fact that they can hang your entire worth to God on a profession of accepting a mystery, even if it is true. It's just, beyond fathom. That was a big deal for me. It really affected me. And from there, that's when I just started to relearn everything. I basically ditched classical theism. Now I would consider myself an open theist. And
Amen, brother.
yeah,
Welcome.
yeah, right. It's just the best position. It really is just the truth.
Yeah. It fits biblically because you don't have to theorize about what something could mean. You just take it at face value, right? I mean, that's the advantage of saying, "Oh yeah, God was surprised in Isaiah 5," or uh, he says, "Now I know," to Abraham after the Akedah, where he lifts the knife, right? And it's like, "Now, don't do it. Now I know." Okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Now you know? You always knew.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
right. Right.
that's interesting. Yeah, sorry. Please continue. What were
Well,
you saying there?
something else that I think is important mentioning here is that the way that God used this, like, in my life and in my heart, like, what ended up happening was really getting down to what matters most. That's where all this is really pointing to, because I think, like, what is the purpose of our Christian walk? It really is to become more like Christ. It's to live like God would want us to, right? And I believe all commandments are really hung up on just loving God and loving other people. And things like the holy days, I think, have made that so much more practical for me and my family. I mean, from the Passover to tabernacles to trumpets, uh, every year God set apart days to go through the story, his narrative, and plan for the world. The Passover points to Christ. We go through that story and think about how important what that means, all the way to things that haven't taken place, like the second coming, which I think is mirrored with trumpets. To me, that's been so much more practical to my life than, say, a Christmas or even an Easter. And again, everything sort of comes down to that. Even these things about God's nature, like, the greatness of our God is not really in the unfathomable complexities of his being. It's in the simple reality of who he is. That is revealed by the Messiah, as well as the stories of people's interactions with him, right? One thing you said, Sean, in my interview with you, which I so appreciate you letting me do at that recent conference, was that Yahweh's a name. You're like,
Yeah.
maybe that sounds simple. I'm like, no, that blew my mind, right? That Lord in the text, there was actually a name there, and that was a
Yeah.
person. And again, I just felt like that deepened my relationship. I felt like by growing in knowledge, I grew closer to God.
Yeah.
And
If you
so, like,
know someone's name, you are more intimate with that person than if you don't know their name, right?
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
just obvious.
yeah,
And yet, Christians have Christian translators for centuries have gone out of their way to translate the name of God out of the Bible. And it's so frustrating. You read the preface of these Bible translations, like especially standard ones like NASB, ESV, NRSV, HCSB. Actually did it a little bit, but then they took it out with the CSB. All these S's are like this idea of standard. Like these are standard translations. These are literal. They're word for word, and yet every one of them is making nearly 7,000 changes from the text they're seeing with their eyes to the translation they're typing with their fingers and changing Yahweh to Lord. And maybe it's not Yahweh, maybe there's other ways to say it, whatever. My point is you're taking out the name of God,
yeah,
right? And to me that's unconscionable, but I think they sense that they have to because it brings too much clarity. That's
yeah,
I don't want to
yeah.
propose some massive conspiracy theory, but that's what I think is going on. Tell us
Mm.
about like what specific verses or reasonings got you questioning the deity of Christ, which presumably you held to before, right?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot. There is a whole lot. It's how it starts is that you see it one place and it hits you, and then you can't stop seeing it everywhere. A good example of this would be, uh, basically, that the Father is not just called the Father of Jesus, he's called the God of Jesus, right? Paul does it like what, 7, 8 times, that the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. So Jesus has a God. And it's like, wait a second. Jesus is God. So like God has a God, like Jesus, and that's the same God. Jesus is the same God as the Father. So Jesus is his own God. But I'm like, whoa, all right. Like that was just one place, right? We could also get into passages like John 17:3, where Jesus clearly predicates only to the Father for the title Theos. He says the Father is the only true God. And he also, in the same statement, calls that eternal life. Says, this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent, right? So it's obviously we need to know God, we need to know Christ, but I was so confused about their relationship. And that's what these verses realized to me, that it was confusing. I felt confused. Um, I mean, there's a half a dozen more examples I could
Yeah.
go through. You want
Yeah.
to start whipping them off? Like
No,
it's
that's fine. I mean, it's just so would you say you're remembering back, it was just coming across these specific verses, or like was there some other I don't know, did you um have social influences on social media, books, YouTube, like what was like the
absolutely.
your entry point, like just starting to question it? Was it just what you said, like with John 17:3 and the God of Jesus? Those are like your early starting points?
Yes,
Okay.
it was also history, right? So I'd read a lot
Yeah.
of commentary about it, both
Yeah.
on the internet as well as books that I purchased. So like here's the thing, right? So I told you, right? It started with Torah observance. So that allowed me to say, okay, these guys are changing things, right? And in fact, most of these people are anti-Semites, by the way. They just many of these church fathers hated the Jews, absolutely loathed them. They associated the feasts of the Lord, the Lord's feast, right, with the Jews. They call them the Jewish feast. It's like, well, they're Jewish, but really they're actually the Lord's institution. Uh, Diving more into that is what opened up the door to say, okay, well, where is this really historically then? Because if they're going to mess up here, I'm sure they messed up elsewhere. And sure enough, when you start to look, none of the early church fathers were Orthodox Trinitarians. They had to invent a brand new language, a formal language. They invented words. Okay. Uh, Many of the existing concepts, like ousia, were borrowed from people like Aristotle and Plato. They were the first ones to use it in a theological context. And that should blow your mind because they predate the New Testament. Okay, so the language actually existed to describe this in their time, but they don't. They don't do that. The Bible uses the word, the New Testament uses the word ousia twice, and it means property. It uses the word hypostasis like 5 times, 2 of which are translated nature. But historically, that was used for person. That's
Right,
their word.
right,
One
yeah.
hypo.
The word had to change meanings once they got going. They had
Oh
to
yeah,
shift
that
it.
it's crazy because then you don't really have a Trinity doctrine, right? Well, we're just going to sit here and retroject some fake
Yeah.
completed doctrine. It didn't exist.
Yeah, like, what does it tell you that you have to change the definition of a word from what the New Testament meant by it to what the church fathers meant by it? Like,
Yeah,
how are we comfortable with that? That
yeah.
doesn't seem right. And yet you hear the echo of it even today when people use the phrase hypostatic union,
Yeah,
right? That's from
yeah.
the hypostasis word.
Hmm.
Crazy.
And when you look at the earliest fathers too, two things. First, you realize that not only were they not Trinitarian, but they actually had distinctly different views which rule out Trinitarianism. So we're talking Irenaeus, Tertullian, Origen, all of them, Eusebius. they were subordinationists. They clearly thought that the Father was God in a sense that the Son was not. Even using terms like homoousios, like at the Council of Nicaea in 325, right? Like even that was interpreted in many different ways. You can read about that by other people, amazing books. I love Constantine and the Divine Mind by Keegan Chandler. I believe he's also aboard on the UCA with you. Phenomenal book, works like that. The second thing is that it also appears the earlier you go back, the closer you get to the Unitarian position. Folks, people like Ignatius, when you remove all of the middle and long, recensions, people like Clement of Rome, these guys were obviously Unitarians. Like they thought that only the Father was God and Jesus was God's Messiah. He was God's son. He was sent by God. He was commissioned by God. Maybe in a few places you could find the title Theos being predicated to him, that, calling Jesus God in some type of a lesser sense. But they clearly don't mean that the same way. And that's also pretty interesting here, too, right? So, in my experience, the reason why I was a Trinitarian is because I was ignorant of things like that. Just what does the word God mean? If you look it up in Blue Letter Bible right now, they're going to tell you the word God means the highest God, capital G, right? Then you have angels, then you have human beings, you have different judges and rulers. You even have Jesus using the Greek word for God. It's actually the plural form theoi when he says, "Is it not written in your law, ye are gods?" Right? Like that just blows my mind, right? So Trinitarianism can't live on past that knowledge once you learn it, and all that was just lost. I was obviously never taught that.
Yeah. Let's talk about Metaphysics Mike. It seems like your channel kind of had a start and then a pause and then another start. What's the story about that? What were you looking to do? And what's the thinking behind the name Metaphysics Mike? It's kind of unusual. So yeah, tell us about that.
Well, I started a video and photography business. God blessed me with some pretty incredible jobs early on. I also did a ton of free work. I built a portfolio, then a website, and I got certified in a bunch of different things. It was like this whole journey, but I acquired these skills. And obviously, in the back end, just besides trying to make a living to supply for my family, I genuinely care, obviously, about scripture, about God, about learning, about knowing what the truth is. And I wanted to have a voice. I think God has blessed me in some ways to teach. And I just wanted to be a part of the voices telling the truth on social media. And so I started creating videos. I made like two or three. And then I realized, I didn't know much more. And what I did know, it didn't fully sit. It didn't fully sit with me. During that time, one of the things that I did was I actually wrote like over 600 pages of history and knowledge and just laying things out in my mind,
That's
just like the whole
incredible.
timeline. Oh, it was, yeah, I in one sense I thought, maybe I could publish it at one point. I've decided I'm not going to publish it, but
It's just like private research, 600 pages.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's
I still
incredible.
got it. I could pull it up right now. Uh, yeah, and that whole journey was tough because I wanted to have a voice, but yet I realized that I needed to still learn more. I needed to be sure of certain things. And that happened by the grace of God. When you see the truth, it changes the way you see everything. And the current Trinitarian social media atmosphere is just toxic. It's condemning, it's legalistic, it's a true legalism. It causes unnecessary division. It builds pride in people's hearts. It is the source of so much unnecessary envy. It is bad. It is so bad. Like, what has to happen in the life of a believer where they start out just knowing that, like, listen, I am totally incapable of justifying myself before God. I am in dire need of the grace of God. in Christ, right? And God just pulls you out the muck and puts you on a path to righteousness and light. And now it's like you want to read the Bible and you want to dedicate to a church. And like, what is that? That's the power of the gospel. But then all of a sudden, seminaries just preying on young people's desire to grow in their faith, to even be able to defend their faith. And instead of giving them that, right, more knowledge of scripture and of God, you get thousands of years of creeds, counsel, and commentary by the Greek philosophers we call the church fathers, that now these Trinitarians believe that they justify themselves by their profession of faith in the Trinity. Like, this has got to be one of the source deceptions by which all others are built. Because if you don't know God, it ruins everything else, right? How you relate to God, how you know God. The Trinity does not just obscure who God is, it puts you under the authority mentally of these ancient edictal losers. All right. These people who got in groups and took votes to figure out the truth and then just start blanket applying it across the whole majority. Like, I made that video, that AI video that's done well on my channel. And in that video,
Yeah,
I
that video is incredible. Was it 160,000 views in a month?
it's
That's
pretty cool.
insane.
It's such a blessing. But in that video, one of the things I do, well, actually, this is in the sequel. Actually, excuse me, it's the one after, about the Council of Nicaea. I show a clip of people outside, like upset, like, who are they to make decisions for us, right? Like, we should be in there. Like, the whole narrative is just wrong. It's defeating. It doesn't result in good fruit in people's life. So I've just decided to go full head on with the doctrine of the Trinity with my channel. And the thing is too that I've created content on TikTok specifically for years, but it was only my content about the Trinity that started to upset some things. I started to get responses from Inspiring Philosophy, from Dan McLellan, from Nick and Nobody, and all. Like, I could just start naming channels. Like, my content on the Trinity was upsetting the narrative. All right. So I realized that, hey, I should probably put some focus on this, even more so. And that's why, like, my channel right now is just laser focused on the doctrine of the Trinity, because I believe it is one of the worst deceptions, clouding the minds of Christians, making them unfruitful in their faith. And yeah, so in the term metaphysics, Mike, to answer that is I needed something catchy. My first name was Mikael Media, which is just like my name, my Hebrew, like in Hebrew. Uh, didn't really like that. So I wanted something more catchy. In metaphysics is the study of reality, existence, who we are, and why we're here. It expands various branches of philosophy itself, whether that's ontology, identity, time. It gets to the core reasons of meaning, right? Um, Metaphysics Mike sounds good, and metaphysics encumbrances a wide range of topics that I think I could talk about, and that's why I ended up choosing it. And I thank God for it, because I thought it would be taken. Metaphysics Mike, it's sort of catchy, but it's not. But
Well, one of the hardest things today is if you're launching a platform to come up with a name that's not already taken and a URL that's not already taken and a channel on YouTube that's not already taken. So,
yeah,
yeah, good for you on that. I, I like metaphysics. I'm interested in metaphysics. I ended up taking some philosophy courses when I was in college. Before I got into Christian stuff, I was just doing science, and um, I found it utterly fascinating, to think about the nature of the universe and reality and light and black holes and quantum theory. And um, then you get to the more spiritual questions, like, okay, like, where's God? And where are angels and demons, and like how does that all work? And
mhm.
yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. So what tell me about your debates. You you you're you have a video with Sam Shamoon. Tell me about that one. How did that come about, and what was your impression of the venerable Shamoon like after? talking with them?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Some people will get onto me about my channel about featuring people like Sam Shamoon, Jay Dyer, Inspire in Philosophy, but the truth is most of them, at least you see my earliest videos on my channel, all of them are responding to people who called me out. Okay, so like I didn't just start a channel just speaking about those things. They actually came to me and I was, obviously co-responding back. But anyways, while making content, I mean, everybody is just like, talk to Sam Shamoon, talk to Jay Dyer, right? Because they like do live streams where they'll debate people. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. Let's do it. Right. So I found his stream. He was streaming live one day and I decided to join. And he let me up like immediately because he remembered me speaking with Matt Slick at one point in one of his lives, like, I don't know, like a few months prior or something like that. And to say the least, it did not go well. Sam Shamoon is insufferable. Can't talk, can't listen. He's not concerned about you, your well being, your understanding. He wants to just dunk, farm clips, farm views. Terrible experience. But I was able to obviously download that and make my own video out of it, and it's one of the best videos on my channel in terms of views. And you can sort of see in that video, my like I'm struggling to actually speak with them in general, but my views even from them have sort of changed in some ways. So I started out with more of like an Aryan position. And then obviously I grew from there. But anyway, so you can see some of that in Sam Shamoon's. I've debated other people on their lives, and I've just started doing formal debates. And when I was younger, debates really helped me. I loved watching them, hearing both sides. Granted, if you have a good uh, host, a good mediator, great discussion. So I've been doing my best to get out there and push back at these guys dominating the space. Listen, I know that like I don't have any degrees. Okay, it's sad. I wish I'm thinking
You
about
got
it, but
chutzpah though.
you get hooks. But yeah, well, it's just like they're just everywhere. The G's that listen, you can pull
Yeah.
up TikTok and you're going to find 100 people streaming Jesus is God and Unitarians are heretics, and so it's just like somebody's got to get out here and start telling these guys to step.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
I love it. And you know what? If you have the truth, then the truth is on your side, and so I think get in this space, do the thing, and let the chips fall where they may. I love it. I love your confidence, your attitude. I think so many biblical Unitarians are timid. So many are terrified, honestly. I know that there are some who hold their faith, like their cards close to their chest. They're in the closet. There's nobody left in the closet, Mike, just these biblical Unitarians. It's a lonely place, the closet these days, and they're terrified. Oh, if I come out of the closet, then I'll get made fun of, or I'll get kicked out of the. Okay, so how are we ever going to change that? By hiding? Is that how we're going to change it?
No.
We're going to change it by engaging and by being a mosquito in somebody's ear, and they're like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
And then you find out, the arguments are not laughable. They're not just liberals, the Unitarians from the 1800s, or the Universalist Unitarians. No, we're not. We believe in the Bible, but not the Trinity. Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's have the conversation. I don't know. I think you're doing a lot of good. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
The beauty of the debate format is that it relentlessly functions on logic. And so, whether or not you have a degree, whether or not you have, some famous person saying, "Hey, I believe in you. I authorize this guy. I endorse his book," whatever. None of that matters. What matters is, does the argument hold weight against the other person's argument? And in that form, there's a real opportunity for, making some big headway. And debates are, so many people do not like debates, and I get it. I'm fairly conflict averse, but but not nearly as much as a lot of people. And they don't like debates because it's like, oh, there's too much conflict. Yeah, there's conflict happening, but here's the deal: the other side. I mean, your side already agrees with you. So, but the other side is actually hearing your side for the first time. Not always, but a lot of times. And I think that's really the benefit. What would you say about debates, like the benefits and like what you've seen?
Well, certainly what we do is for the viewers. We'd love to be able to drop some facts and hear them just crumble, right? Wow, you're right. But that that doesn't happen. They're there to debate you. But for the viewers, I think it makes a strong impact. And I mean, there's so many things you could say. It's probably important to put out here that really, even on the Unitarian side, I definitely see a need for more growth in the comment section. It's so tough because the only people you hear are like the loudest ones, right? In chat. But there's a lot of people watching these that we don't see in the background. And it's always encouraging to get different messages from people that it encouraged them, it helped them, or whatever. I think a lot people tend to think of debates and as like a win or lose who won by the end of the night, but I tend to think of debates in the long term. So I think even after the debate is done, we keep doing more debates, and over time we'll plant seeds in many of these people, their hearts, and those need to be watered. And it can just take time. So, I also think the growth, the harvest that comes from these debates is going to be later. Because as you said, for some, it's like the first time they've even heard this. It has to be cultivated. And those people need to be loved, by the way, even by us. I know that I can be kind of intense in my debates, by the way. I'm still learning on how to control and balance my energy. All right, I'll acknowledge that. Debates, I try and be fierce on purpose. Because, I mean, all right, this sort of goes left field, but I just want to say this. But like, take people like you, Sean. Take Dustin Smith. Take Dale Tuckey. You guys have prestige. You guys have been around. You guys are probably busy and doing stuff. Like, you shouldn't really have to be the ones who go in these guys' lives to debate them all the time. We need more people like me doing what, like getting in there and debating them. Like that you shouldn't get in there and be debating them. It's just I'm not even sure if it's fitting, but people like me can. I can just hop in and try and lay it out even without all the backing. So in many ways I'm dependent upon people like you and your research and the books you publish and the papers and just the data. So I've finished reading I told you Constantine and the Divine Mind. I
Yeah.
also loved Wisdom Christology and the Gospel of John, Dynamic
Mhm.
Monarchianism. So like I want to be the voice for all the
Mhm.
high level work that you guys do.
Yeah.
And so I also think that creates the opportunity to get that out there to these people. That's another way these debates help is because they're not like aware of the scholarly data on it. They just
Right.
hear the Trinitarian view. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a difficult thing because I'm the kind of person that wants to do everything. And, like I was going to debate Matt Slick some years ago, and I looked at like just my weekly schedule, and I was like, I just don't have any time to prepare. And like, there's no way I'm going to go up against Matt Slick and not watch some Matt Slick debates first so that I know what's coming. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I'm not just going to go in there and get cold cocked. And I was like, all right, well, let's just put a pin in it for 6 months. And, 6 months came around and I just didn't have the time. And I looked at my people and, as a pastor, I'm responsible to the church. And, they're just not into it, and I was like, I just don't think that this is necessarily what God's calling me to right now. But like you're right, somebody needs to do it. And we need more and more doing it. I was very much cheering on Dustin Smith and Will Barlow in their tag team debate. I don't know if you saw that one a while back, maybe like last year. And I was like, yes. And
yeah,
they would benefit from some of your killer instinct because like it was the chummiest debate I've ever seen. Like it was just all high fives. Like the Trinitarians, like, hey, look how friendly we are with these Unitarians. And the Unitarians are like, hey, we see you guys, you're Christians. Everybody's happy. It was a big powwow until the closing statement. They made their closing statement. They're like, aren't we all friends? And these are like evangelical Trinitarians. It was like totally unusual for them to have that kind of demeanor. And then Dustin Smith got up, cleared his throat, and said, "We've presented 6 arguments why the Trinity is false and we're right, and you haven't answered any of them." And he just like spiked the ball. He's like, "We win." And I was like, "Yes, yes, somebody,
Yeah.
somebody have some passion for truth here." And
Yeah.
so I actually love that debate because the ending was so good. And I honestly wish I could do more, but it's like, the kind of like um, realities of life are that you have to pick what you can do. And Mike, you're really experiencing training, honing your skills by going through this and doing this. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get. You get some of these people, not just Matt Sig, like take a James White. He's debated 100 times or 1,000, however many times he's debated.
Yeah.
Why is he so able to, like, James White can just win any debate he wants. Not if you count it by like logical arguments or something, but he can win in the eyes of the audience because he's done it so many times that when he perceives he's losing, he just gets emotional or makes a cheap point that he knows doesn't follow logically, but will just because he's a professional debater.
Yeah.
He knows how to do that. I saw him do that with Dale Tucky, and I was like, "What?" So then you have to bring in the specialist, somebody that can say, "Okay, well, these were the arguments and these were the responses." But like your average person is just going to make decisions based on emotion, aren't they? So we need people that can have both. We don't want to cheat to win, but we do want to use everything we can use in the service of truth. But I think at the same time we want to be respectful. I think you agree with that. Defend yourself with respect, was it gentleness and respect? And sometimes a gentle response can be more powerful than an angry response. But then, we look at the example of Jesus. There were times where he amped it up, where he went, woe to the scribes and Pharisees, Matthew 23. I mentioned this the other day. So there is obviously a range. And I would love to see more. I think you're right. More and more debaters, the better. And I get this image of linking hands, electronically speaking, on all these different channels and platforms and so forth, and we're all lifting each other up together out of obscurity into the public eye. And the more we do that, the better.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And something that was so cool about this Converge conference is that there were, some diverse positions in some areas, but really a unity on those core truths. And that was something I felt like I'd never really felt before in that same way. Something about it was so powerful. And I think that's, all in the same line of the Unitarian Christian Alliance, right? The UCA. And I think that's also necessary for us to go to the next place. Uh, we need more people speaking out, telling the truth, being knowledgeable, also being loving and kind, but also being able to fight the right battles and to keep unity where it's necessary, to lean into your commonalities, right? Not to just ignore everything else, but to have, there's power in focus, right? There's power there. And I think just seeing what you guys are doing at the UCA and all the different books and again, the papers and things you guys have put out, the videos, the debates. I know there's another one coming up here with Dale and James White. That should be exciting. Absolutely necessary. And for us to come more together. If we don't do that, if we're not willing to put some of those things aside, uh, and it's like almost not even agreeing to disagree at times. Like it's even less than that. It's almost just being born out of love. It was something I saw at the conference. It's not like, hey, these differences don't exist. That's how people perceive it. Oh, for me to come in unity with them, to come together, like would be to say I agree with them on X or Y. It's really not. And I also think it actually even exalts Christ to a more accurate position in our understanding. Because listen, I think works are important. Your faith should result in a changed life. I consider myself Torah observant, okay, but at the end of the day, grace is the pathway through Christ to God. Okay, that's what it is. And I think God can save. in many of these positions, right? And we shouldn't be playing the same egotistical agendas of Trinitarians to hold something that's only philosophically different, right? Very menial differences over people's heads, driving walls in the ground unnecessarily. Yep.
So that first debate with Dale Tuggy and James White, uh, utterly fascinating debate, by the way. And shortly thereafter, James White reached out, like within a day or two, or maybe just a few days, and said, "Hey, let's do another debate." And I was thinking to myself, why would he do that? It's like, he obviously despises biblical Unitarians, and like just doesn't even give Dale like the basic respect that you should give a colleague. I mean, let's face it.
Mhm.
James White has a PhD, but I think it's from like an unaccredited school, whereas like Dale Tuggy is from Ivy League. He has an Ivy League PhD at the top of Brown University. Like you should give the guy a little respect. Just to see him as an equal. I'm saying, right?
Mhm.
But like it wasn't even there. But then after the debate, he reaches out and he's like, "Hey, let's do another debate." The winner doesn't reach out and ask for another debate. Am I wrong? Am I wrong here? It's always the loser that's just like, what, I really could do better. So I don't know. I mean, that's speculation, but talk to me about the future. Where do you see your platform growing, and what do you see the future as far as like goals for you and where God's leading you?
Well, you know, I'm working full time, running a marketing agency in my city. I'm so privileged and blessed to be doing what I'm doing. That God has just blessed me to run this business, and it pays our bills. So thankful. But I am hoping to pivot to content creation full time. I have a few channels actually, not just one. Metaphysics Mike. I have another channel focused on like urban agriculture. It's got like 15,000 subs. I'm trying to basically create a lifestyle where I can create more content. Um, I also just opened up memberships on my channel. I think I have like 4 to 5 or 6 of them, something like that. And I don't know really what the future holds, but that's what I would like. That would be such a blessing. So I'm like working in the back end, doing all different types of things. So many people have been giving me issues as well for like selling some merchandise. I have like a hat that says "One God" on it. Like people are like ripping me up for that. Listen, I'm just trying to
Wait,
make
why are
more
they ripping
waves.
you up for that?
Because I had another guy tell me that he compared me to selling doves in the temple for sins, and it's like it wasn't just one guy, but
This is just
so
basic marketing. Come on.
yeah, right, right.
And you're not even I don't think it would be wrong for you to market yourself, but you're not even marketing yourself. You're marketing a message that, needs to get out there.
Yeah. So I am working basically more than 2 full-time jobs right now. I'm working my agency, and I'm also just constantly in the back end for both my channels trying to get out there. And again, I'm so thankful for what God has done, but that's where my faith is. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get
Yeah.
there one day.
So to you viewers or listeners out there, if you want to see more of his content, if you want to see more of Mike's content, then he needs your support. Bottom line. And we need to be I was thinking about this, Mike. It doesn't take millions of people. If you have millions of people and they all give a dollar, yeah, you get $1 million, right? But that's not really the situation in the biblical Unitarian movement, at least not yet. Even though there are millions, I would guess billions of biblical Unitarians in lots of different denominations. They don't even know the label or the distinction. They just see the Father as superior to Jesus,
Yeah.
whether they believe in pre-existence or not.
Mhm.
But I would say that if you have a smaller group of people, if they're active, if they're activists, if they're like passionate, then we can move the needle. You know what I mean? So I encourage you guys to check into Metaphysics Mike. Um, I did want to ask another question. but it's eluding me at the moment. Maybe I'll come back to it. But
Okay.
how can people follow you? How can they support you? What can they do?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Metaphysics Mike. YouTube is the best platform to watch my videos, like the video, share it. All those things help. Subscribe. And if you want to see more of my work and you just want to help me get to the place where I can make more content, becoming a channel member is probably the best way. Where it's basically like a subscription model. It's new. I just joined it on YouTube. They accepted me in their program. So from $3 to 25, 50, whatever you want to do a month. And man, it is tough for me to even like say that, to put that out there. Like, guys, I work
Super
insanely
awkward,
hard.
but
Yeah.
it's don't be ashamed. Look,
Yeah.
it takes money. I would rather have you doing debates, creating content, pulling from Thomas Gaston's book and Dale Tuggie's work and Dustin Smith's and 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 shaping that into something that's actually going to connect with normal people. Because this is like one of our problems is that we get a little technical and then normal people are just like, what is that? And like I'll give an hour-long lecture or a 45-minute sermon, and what they really want is a talking head who's gonna hit it just like in a minute and nail it and do the kind of stuff that you're doing. So um, you know, I think we need more of it. How are we going to get more of it? Well, if you got to work your other job 40, 50, 60 hours a week, then guess what? You're limited. So I think if you have more of a broad perspective on it, it all makes sense. We know you're not trying to get rich and buy a Rolls Royce and a private jet. Okay. But if you do have a private jet, I would love to talk because flying the other way across the world is takes a lot out. I'm
Yeah.
still kind of like recovering from the trip to England. But what else? So subscribe to you. Do you have a website too, or is that
So
in
it's
the
it's
works?
it's
Or
yes, it's just in the works essentially
okay,
right now. Yeah. All I have is a merch website called onegodmerch.com. That's what I got.
onegodmerch.com. Go there and buy something. Okay, find something you like and buy it, please. Um, so anything else we should cover? Oh, I remember my question.
All
It's a
right.
really good question, and you might have to think for a second. If you could snap your fingers and change one thing in the biblical Unitarian movement today, what would it be?
It's a hard question. I mean, probably I
It
would
is a
like
hard
to
question.
yeah, so what's the correct answer is probably just all the different walls, the division, uh, for to go away. The reason why I say that is because when I first joined the UCA group, uh, the roaches came out. And they got a lot of different messages and people telling me about controversies and about this and that. And I've gotten to speak with Brandon, who's been great, a lot about like people just
Brandon Duke.
always, yeah. Here's the thing, just like you said, man, when people come together for something that we know is true, that actually results in good fruit in people's life, we could change so much. And if we could just get a lot of that envy, strife or just bitterness between people out of the picture, I think it can make such a big difference. Like even some of the differences like Torah observance. I know that some people are like hard pass on like keeping the Sabbath. Okay. But when you form these networks and you still acknowledge, okay, God's power to through grace to they're in the fold still. Okay. Like I think that opens up the opportunity for God to do more cool things through us. So I think if biblical Unitarians could just have a bit more unity in some ways, I think it could result in very great differences and, again, just more opportunities for things to change and move.
Yeah. Something you encounter in the biblical Unitarian world is, I mean, in any world really, you have these gatekeepers. You also have people that are eager to sow strife, or just eager to kind of push their own agenda, right? And I think a lot of times biblical Unitarians are people who weren't afraid to ask questions. And sometimes we are a little bit more rugged and a little bit more individualistic.
Yeah,
Because, like, if we weren't, we'd still be following the Trinity idea in mainstream Christianity.
right.
So, I think uh, that is true to some degree, but yeah, cutting each other some slack. I disagree with you on Torah observance. I think you know that. Um, but I don't believe it's salvational, and I don't believe it's going to. I think following the Torah is good for you. Like the Israelites did it. So I don't need to make that like a condition of fellowship or a condition of salvation. I think if we were going to do church together, it probably wouldn't work out because we just would have too many differences. But that doesn't mean we can't cheerlead each other. We can't support each other. We can't say, "Hey, I see you over there. You're doing good stuff, and I'm going to support the stuff I can support, even
Mhm.
though we have other disagreements." And maybe we can talk about our disagreements. Probably not at a UCA event because that's not the point of it. But like amongst ourselves, we can certainly talk about our disagreements, and I
Yeah.
think help each other out in that sense. So,
Mm,
all right, any
agreed.
final thoughts before closing down?
Sean, thank you so much for having me on. It was great to meet you at Converge Conference. It's really my privilege to be on here. And yeah, I'm just thankful to be here. Thank you, and really the whole board of the UCA for just being so supportive of me and just all the opportunity you've given me. It's truly my privilege to be here in your sphere. And I'm just soaking up all the experience and
Mhm.
knowledge and wisdom that I can. And yeah, I'm excited for the future.
Well, thanks so much for talking with me today. I appreciate it.